I'm Amy Baxter, editor of Retail Leader, and welcome to Trend Talk. Every week on Trend Talk, we identify a trend in the retail industry with a keen eye toward convenience, drug, and grocery, and give it a deep dive with an industry insider. So this week our guest is Don Longo, editorial director of Convenience Store News, and today we're discussing the experimental convenience store format. It's a really exciting trend that really reflects what's going on with consumers and reflective of the times. So Don, thanks so much for being here. Could you introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, Amy. Thank you for having me on your program. So I'm Don Longo, editorial director of Convenience Store News. We're the leading media brand covering the $530 billion plus convenience store retail industry.
Awesome. So I'd love to start out with an overview of this trend. There's a number of new and exciting convenience store formats emerging. One recent one that I wrote about was the 7-Eleven Evolution store concept that recently added a drive-thru with 7-Eleven's taco company in Texas. And we're seeing retailers of all kinds experiment with store formats. It's not just convenience, right? Amazon, of course, continues to push boundaries of its concept stores. CVS is adding healthcare hubs to its spaces, and Target is doing smaller stores and a lot more pickup options in stores. So from the convenience side, can you give us a scope of this trend?
Sure. Well, convenience stores have always been masters at evolving along with changes in consumer behavior. I mean, the first ones became popular by staying open during hours when traditional grocery stores were closed and shoppers had immediate needs for milk and grocery products. Then as the nation became more mobile and families moved out to the suburbs, convenience stores added gas pumps, which proved to be an amazing draw to the point where C-stores now sell nearly 80% of all gasoline in the country. And now, condensing about 100 years of C-store retail history into a few seconds, in the early 90s, smart C-store retailers figured out that declining profits on gasoline and cigarettes would drive them out of business. So they started expanding into food service. Mm-hmm. So what started out as basic coffee service, roller grill items, and such things like that has evolved with consumer taste to include pizza, sandwiches, and even dinner meal programs. Some of the best convenience food service retailers are more restaurant than retail store in many cases today.
Yeah, that's interesting. So can you talk a little bit more about how convenience stores are really able to react to shopper behaviors or consumer behaviors? Like what's driving convenience stores to test out new services or offerings or products?
Sure. Well, innovation has been ongoing, driven by competition among themselves, as well as from outside the channel, which you mentioned some of that. For example, the grocery stores that are opening smaller hybrid concepts. Dollar stores are expanding their product offerings into typical convenience store items like cigarettes and cold drinks. And in a different way, the changing consumer expectations that were created by checkout-free shopping pioneered by Amazon Go stores. More recently, it's been said by several people in our industry that the COVID-19 pandemic has accelerated technology innovation in the past year by 3 to 5 years, especially in the implementation of such services as mobile ordering, curbside pickup, and home delivery. These are all new services that before were things that people would like to have, but now they are must-haves.
Yeah. So what are some of the best, you've named a bunch of examples here of what's going on, but are there any concepts that have flopped or, conversely, what's like the best experimentation that you've seen? If there's any one C-store that really stands out amongst its competitors?
Well, the thing that interests me right now, I think is an interesting example because it's something that started at one time, then kind of fell onto, was a kind of abandoned, and now seems to be having a resurgence, is drive-thrus. C-stores have experimented with drive-thrus for years, but few of them were ever able to find the profitable way of doing it without the risk of losing impulse sales, as well as being able to do it without and absorb the tremendous cost of retrofitting existing units. But today we're seeing a resurgence in C-stores looking at the drive-through window as a way to serve customers who still are nervous about stepping inside the store. Now that Wawa has opened its first drive-through only store in Morrisville, Pennsylvania, I expect there will be an accelerated push by other C-store chains to try drive-thrus.
Yeah, cool. Makes sense with the COVID times for sure.
Yeah.
So what are some of the benefits for convenience stores, especially when they have, like 7-Eleven have its Evolution store area, that it's its own thing where they do lots of different things there that isn't at scale elsewhere. So what are the benefits of doing things like that? That's where stores can experiment.
Yeah, well, I think the benefit is that for some retailers, in some cases, it's a survival issue. Like old-fashioned convenience stores that rely on fuel, coke, and smokes are increasingly under the gun competitively. Meanwhile, others have seen the success of some of the best-in-class C-store retailers like Sheetz, Wawa, Quick Trip, Parker's, Casey's, and a number of others, and want to emulate them. NACS research shows that the upper quartile of retailers typically are the ones that are fresh food focused, significantly outperform the lower quartile retailers by a wide margin in both sales and profits.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I want to know now the downsides or the risks of trying out new things.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
The risk is certainly not doing anything when those other parts of the business are dying out. But what are the risks of actually taking a step, doing retrofits, putting money on the line to try out things?
Sure. I mean, you're right. There's always a risk when trying new concepts and services, but there's a greater risk to standing still. I think it was Will Rogers who said, even if you're on the right track, you'll get run over if you just sit there. So, I think the risks are usually worth it because even the elements that fail, usually you'll learn something from them. For example, let's take the 7-Eleven's Evolution laboratory store that you mentioned. Now, some elements of that concept, like self-serve bean-to-cup coffee and espresso machines with touchscreen ordering, are being rolled out as we talk to other C-stores, other 7-Eleven stores in the chain. So are cookies and croissants that are baked in-store on a daily basis. But there are other elements that'll work in some stores and not work in others, such as the larger selection of organic and natural items and the expanded wine selection. They have this new on-tap selection of beverages, such as nitro cold brew, premium teas, blended smoothies with real fruit, and other novelty beverages. Those will probably only work in certain markets. So it'll be really interesting to see how many innovations from the Evolution store are incorporated into traditional 7-Elevens. I hope a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, that really leads me into my last question, which is, what are your predictions for the future with this trend right now? Will there continue to be these ad hoc store concepts, or will we see some of it at scale?
Yeah, I think all the retailers have experiments going on everywhere. As I mentioned, Wawa trying the drive-only store. Several other retailers have urban-focused stores without fuel, so they're operating in city centers and they're operating to serve a more city audience of people who work in urban areas, which is probably problematic right now with COVID because a lot of people haven't gone back to work. But that was something that a lot of retailers were experimenting with as well. I think all of these pandemic-related technology-driven services have legs into the future, but to varying degrees. Contactless shopping and mobile payment continue to be important to consumers even after the pandemic. So things like mobile ordering, curbside pickup, and home delivery will expand within the C-store channel. I already mentioned that drive-thrus will get a big test in the coming years from convenience retailers. And now that retailers have started this journey to reinvent convenience by digitizing their operations and creating a frictionless shopping experience for the consumer, there's no going back. Customers will be able to scan a mobile app, pick up their groceries and freshly prepared meals and walk out of the store without going through a checkout. Ancillary services like car washes will all be tied to the same app and also to a rewards program. And shopping will be more personalized with offers customized based on the participants' shopping history. These will be big changes for the channel, but really they aren't unprecedented ones. Just like adding gas pumps and freshly made food seemed radical at the time. I don't see any reason why these developments won't make the convenience store industry bigger and more successful.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, this is very cool. I think this topic is super interesting just because of how rapidly it changes and how reflective it is of just what's going on kind of in the world at the time.
Well, I think convenience stores have always been, are so nimble. They just keep changing with the times, and maybe it's because they're smaller footprint. Maybe it's because the high degree of entrepreneurial ownership. Many of the original families still run a lot of these companies. I think it's all tend to lead to a more entrepreneurial and innovative retail channel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very cool. Awesome. Well, Don, thank you so much for your insights on this trend. It's certainly exciting to see what stores are coming up with and think about what will happen in the future. And so that's, oh, sorry.
I just said thank you. Yeah, it was a pleasure to do it.
Great. And so that's going to do it for us on Trend Talk this week. We'll see you back here next week with another retail trend.